a couple months ago, you guys were featured. You're mentioned in an article on seafoodsource.com, which mentions AI in the shrimp farming industry. Will TAA be looking to incorporate this type of technology in shrimp farming?
Yeah. So, I mean, when you think about the way that shrimp farming has been done historically, it's extraordinarily manual labor intensive. Literally guys driving up and down the levees on the ponds and throwing feed in, letting the shrimp come by, doing daily oxygen checks on the water. So like 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock in the morning, doing oxygen readings, doing temperature readings. There are, it's labor intensive. One, it's not at a great schedule. But it's also costly. I mean, these guys are skilled laborers. They make a decent amount of money, especially on the H-2A programs. So we've been looking at hardcore auto feeders, which essentially an auto feeder is like it's a feed silo that sits in the middle of a pond. And on the bottom of it is like a sonar cone or some sort of like almost like a microphone device that it dispenses feed and it listens for these, like the signature of shrimp eating. So shrimp have mandibles. So when they eat, it makes a distinct sound. So you'll know when the shrimp are eating. So obviously, if you've got a guy who's literally just on the back of a truck throwing feed into a pond, you're not going to have the most scientific method in terms of your feed conversions and things like that. But utilizing these auto feeders is one way to bring feed conversion down, bring costs down, but also be more efficient with our feed and more efficient with the shrimp growth rates. Additionally, there are other devices where you can monitor the oxygen levels, pond conditions, heavy metals, things like that, salinity, temperature. Those are all fantastic to have. And it's very valuable to have that information, especially as you look at it over time. But if you can literally open up your phone, check an app, and see what all 80 of the ponds that are in use right now, what they're looking like on a daily basis, if you've got an issue somewhere and you need to address it. That is something that's, we have been in talks with a couple distributors about purchasing those as well. So just those two things alone right there are massive, opportunities for efficiency, reduction of costs in terms of labor, and also in terms of feed. And then you also have artificial aeration, which we are looking into. It's not necessarily something that we're going to dive head feet into first this year because of the model that we use is considered extensive, and we do enough water exchange and there's enough natural wind at the farm where we may not need to do that. But as we start to expand the farm and further intensify. So when I say intensify, I mean like right now we'll stock 15 to 20 per square meter shrimps, larvae per square meter. If we go up to 30 to 40, we'll probably want to introduce that artificial aeration. That also increases oxygen levels. You don't have to worry about those readings in the morning and things like that. And then that's just on the shrimp side. On the broodstock side, there are some programs out there where you can kind of, input your data. Obviously, the more data, the better. But then the programs start to spit out kind of like preferential mating pairings. So if you have, let's just say we'll use our facility as an example. We have 8 tanks that house broodstock. We know that this generation of broodstock right here has a specific disease resistance, but these broodstocks have exhibited exponential growth rates. We'll punch in all those characteristics, and then you can actually do almost like a machine learning model to see, hey, look, I need a very, very resistant animal that also has cold tolerance, and it grows at this specific level per week. We can punch that in, and you'll find out, okay, go to this tank, take that tank, mate those two together, and take a look at the results. So that is something that we're working on. We don't have that just yet, but those are like some of the programs that are available that we'll be getting into later this year.
Yeah, and you said, I think 10 to 15 per square meter, and eventually you wouldn't invest in that, once you get to 30 to 40 per square meter. And we had this conversation before. A lot of the shrimp that we're getting in the United States, there are upwards of 500 shrimp per square meter, correct?
Yeah, so that's
insane. That is totally insane.
Well, and there's various models. So there's extensive, which is what we focus on. That is, the history of the family. That's where the expertise is right now. The family has developed expertise in kind of in more intense, like semi-intensive, we'll call it, or less extensive. But there's extensive, which is what we're focusing on right now. To make your RAS systems work, so these recirculating aquaculture systems that you have indoors, or technically we could be considered a recirculating facility because we don't discharge, but a lot of the indoor systems, you need to stock at a more higher density because just the simple cost to produce. And so as you look at kind of like South American models in certain instances, but then also in Southeast Asian models, like they're really starting to push the envelope. Okay, if I put 10 aerators in this essentially 1 acre pond, I'm going to have XYZ oxygen level. So theoretically, I can have 300, 400, 500 animals per square meter. And if I get 50% of them out of the pond, so be it. Now, granted, they're going to be pretty stressed out. There's a huge competition for resources, which shrimp get stressed out pretty easily. You'd be surprised, like they'll stop eating or they'll exit their bowels and they'll just decide not to eat. So they're very finicky when it comes to like having the right conditions for growth. And when you have those hugely intensive models, I mean, you're just not getting the type of quality of animal you get in an extensive or a semi-intensive model. And so that's where we're focusing. We have the infrastructure for that. That's not to say that eventually down the road, when the technologies develop and we start to develop characteristics with the shrimp where they can endure those more intense environments, and we'll not get into that. But right now, the focus is on the extensive model to provide cleanest, healthiest, most quality product we can provide. And you'll be able to literally taste the difference. So.